in which you can do so. So with that, the road less traveled. So how did we get here? And where do we go from now? You know, so often God moves in ways in our life that we wouldn't necessarily have done if we were given the choice. There are a lot of aspects of our lives that can add to the things that He's called us to do, and as we know, unfortunately, there are aspects that can draw us away from what He's called us to do, and for some of us, in some cases, maybe that has happened. A little background about what got me here and to be at a place where I'm operating in the fullness of what I believe God has called me to do, and that's obviously my business ministry, Excellence at Work. So my journey really started back in 2001 when about 8,500 of my closest friends and I were laid off from Cisco. And at the time, I wasn't sure whether or not the layoff was going to come, but I went and did what I call Marilyn's God check, if you will. And I said, Lord, if I get laid off, can I go ahead and just jump in the car and run away for 3 weeks? And my reason for asking that question was that prior to that, I had done some international traveling for Cisco, but I had never seen my country, America. So I thought, well, if I get laid off, this would be a wonderful opportunity, just absolutely selfishly, to go see America. So God sucker punched me, if you will, and He said yes. So, as we know, then the layoff came, and I 2 weeks later packed up the car, made no reservations, took Visa, figured I was safe, little plug for Visa there, and set out about my journey. And the way I explain it is I headed south from San Jose, where I lived, and headed down to Bakersfield and took a left turn and kept on going. And what I learned during that time were some amazing gifts that God gave, and He did those things through speaking with other people, through the geographical locations that I went to during that time, and just speaking to my spirit. And I didn't know at the time that as I was journaling just about very personal, intimate things that I was hearing and experiencing, that God was germinating a book. And that's why I say that He really sucker punched me when He told me that I could go take a vacation and run away for 3 weeks. So during that time, I started to get inklings of what He was doing, though, because as I would talk with people, 4 or 5 of them, and it took about the 5th time until I really got that something was up, they would say, you know, you ought to write a book. To which Marilyn's flesh responded, no, not so much. That's not something that I've thought about doing, but it kept coming up in the course of conversations. And so when I got back, it was just early June, and my focus was absolutely on getting back to work. But there were some family things that happened and kind of slowed me down from a work search, if you will. And so fast forward all the way to September 11th. And I remember sitting at home on my sofa and watching the towers come down. And it was at that moment that I heard so clearly my calling. And God said, you must write the book that only you can write. And what He meant by that wasn't that Marilyn was so cute or talented. It was just that Marilyn was the only human being on this earth that had had those 3 weeks of experience. And I want to sow that seed to you right now where you're at, because I believe God is speaking to you right now. You have a set of experiences. Your feet have been where no other human being's feet have been. You've spoken to people. You will speak to people that no other individual in a collective sense will have done. So bringing it back onto where we are at this point, I want you to begin to think as we take this journey for the next few minutes, what is it that has gotten you to this place and time? Again, for me, it started with a layoff. It went into writing a book, which then led to creating a spiritual gifts assessment, and ultimately going back to finish up my Ph.D. and doing a dissertation on how Christians use their spiritual gifts in the workplace. None of this was on Marilyn's agenda for the early 2000s, but it was clearly on God's. So again, I invite you, as we move forward, to start to think about what has led you to this moment in time. So first things first, preparing for success by addressing